I've been meaning to go back and look at my notebooks, my old notebooks, for a while. And actually, one of my wonderful subscribers thought it was a good idea. Somebody out there agrees with me. And so I'm going to go through my first 30 notebooks. This would be 31. I'm just showing it here to show like a beginning and end to the current status of the quest. Now, the older notebooks are a little thicker. And I think that is partly because I used to have more handouts, but also because at some point I liked them when they were near 300 pages. So what happened so the first three notebooks, and again, I'm not going to show them all in detail because we're going to be here forever, were calculus, number theory, Rosen, and then proofs by Hammock, the Hammock book. And then at some point after that, I just went number theory crazy. So in the case of calculus, this is actually my first book. So this goes back to September of 2021. And at the time, I think my note writing was a little bigger. I'm noticing. Yeah, if you look at how I write now, number one, I'm using darker pencils. I went pencil crazy thanks to suggestions from some of my wonderful subscribers from India. And so I have darker quality pencil, but also my writing 4 years later is getting a little smaller. I used to write in a little bigger. The letters were a little bigger back then. Yeah, I think so. I'll keep comparing just because, yeah. So then, yeah, these are my very first notes, and I was just getting back to calculus, going through Thomas and Finney. Yeah, that's the book. Had my own little color scheme for pages, and of course I was able in that book to check the odd number problems. I would give myself little tests at the time. I stopped doing that after I realized, I'm just going to barrel through and do whole books. I did not finish all of Thomas and Finney. I just got out of it what would get me up and running again. So that's the first one. Then the second one is number theory. Started with Rosen. And I did do this whole book. Yeah, again, back to September. They all started, the first three notebooks started at the same time. But I had a little system. Look at how much bigger my writing was at the time. Of course, I had little notes. I had this system that I dropped because it just became unwieldy, where I would mark all the questions that I would attempt from a section. And yeah, my early number theory was very clumsy. I remember not completing a lot of problems, getting a lot of problems wrong. And this is, if you're interested in starting with math and doing what I'm doing over the course of years, don't be discouraged. Your early work is not going to be your latter work. It's just not going to be. You're going to get better at it. And I do remember just getting a lot of problems wrong in the beginning in Rosen. I got better at it. I did that. I definitely felt like I got better at it over time. And I think by now, 4 years later into abstract algebra, I do feel the difference of just, pounding that wall until there's a hole in it. Every now and then I would spend like a holiday. I believe this is a holiday that I spent doing, finding all the primes and then doing all the factorizations of the smaller natural numbers, just finding how they went, the patterns, 3 7s, 9s. Yeah, I had fun with that. And that's something that I think is useful for somebody getting started, that if you're frustrated when you're trying all these problems, all these theorems, and your maturity and writing proofs is just not there yet, in my case, I recommend, there's just nothing wrong with spending a day just calculating simple things out. I think that really helped me. Yeah, I would do summaries back then. Yeah. And yeah, I collected handouts, and that's the reason why I think partly why some of these early notebooks are so thick. And then the hammock book, I think the whole book is in just this one notebook. It's a thin book. This was a really good book, Hammock. This is the book that really I owe for giving me that first step going forward. Look at how big my font was. Yeah, my letters were so big back then. Yeah, big difference. Big difference. And I mean, today I would put all this like here, but I took the whole page. Yeah, today I would write all of this like here. Yeah, my writing got tighter, and the way, I think in the early days, and I think this is going to happen to anybody who gets started the way that I did, you're just not as good at writing out all the symbols and keeping them separate. I think that's the way that I would say it. Yeah, study and redo. I did a lot of that. I still was doing quizzes, just going back in multiple rounds. These days I just barrel through. I just do everything. Yeah, I would give myself little quizzes. But yeah, this is all of Hammock. Yep. So those are the first 3 notebooks of this quest. And of course, you'll find videos for these in my early videos. But I'm just having a lot of fun looking through. See, now my handwriting near the end of Hammock started getting neat. Yeah, so you can see, look at the difference. What a difference those early books made, that by the time I get to the latter part of this book, my writing is already neater than the early pages. Yeah. Okay, so those are the first 3 books. So then after those first 3 books, I went into number theory in Rosen, and I finished Rosen. So there was that first notebook that I showed before. That was the beginning of Rosen, and then these 3 cover the rest of Rosen. Now the notebooks are getting thinner, and there's fewer handouts, because I got to the point where I felt like around 300 pages was good enough for a notebook. I didn't want the big, bulky 350-page notebooks anymore. Yeah, so this is chapter 4 of Rosen. And now I'm beginning to mature in my note writing. And I'm also beginning to mature in my problem solving and the way that I would do a bunch of calculation problems just to get into it. That's something that I learned early on, and I continue to use that today. I love the calculation problems because they get me into the field and keep me going. They're a little bit of a motivational thing. The proofs problems can be fun, but occasionally when you encounter a proof that's just really hard and you're just like not getting it, that can be discouraging. Yeah, I was still doing quizzes at this stage. Drop some water on this page. Yeah, so that's chapter 5 of Rosen. Yeah, integer partitions. I did do handouts because I knew that at some point I would go back, and sometimes, and maybe I should do some more handouts these days that I don't do them anymore, is that sometimes handouts, the link goes dead, and then you have the handout. So I would be careful about that. If you see a handout, in my opinion, if you see a handout that you really like, that's got a lot of really good stuff, I print it and put it in your notebook now, just in case. Yeah, so partitions. Binomial coefficients. which I really have to get back to. Primitive roots. I had so much fun with primitive roots. Yeah, but the thing that I love Rosen for how many answers there were in the back, but some of the problems were really hard. I think it's the only book that I've done so far that has answers and really difficult problems with answers, with really, really lengthy answers in the back. It's very unique, actually, for a math book. And then here I finish off. This is chapter 11, quadratic residues. Once I got into quadratic reciprocity, I really started having fun with number theory. Primitive roots and quadratic reciprocity, for sure. Then continued fractions were a lot of fun. Yeah, I made a bunch of videos calculating continued fractions. Square root of 97, look at that. I think I did square root of 97 in a video at some point. Yeah, calculating continued fractions. Lots of fun, look at that. Square root of 97. I always remember square root of 97. Yeah, so that closes out Rosen. Now, the next thing that I did after I completed Rosen is I really felt like I needed some validation. I wanted to make sure that what I was doing in this quest was not completely wrong. And so I took a course online that is a real mathematics course at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. When I showed these books way back then, I don't think I mentioned that because I didn't want anybody to look at my books, at my notes, and use them to cheat. That's the reason why. And so when I show these 4 notebooks in this video, I will only show you the early parts. The latter parts have the exams. I ended up getting an A- in the course. This told me that I was in the ballpark with this quest. So it was net math. Math 453. Net Math had a bunch of other courses. I wanted to take them, planned them all out, spent hours planning them out, and then I decided it's just too much. The book is James Strayer. So I kept track of all my reading and all the assignments when I did them. Then it had lectures by a professor, video lectures that I took notes for. So in this case, now I'm repeating material that I've already done. Actually, some material like partition functions, like partitions in number theory, not partition functions, partitions, were not covered in the course. So actually, this course covered less material than I had already covered, but I got tested, which is something that I really wanted to be. Yeah. So I did problem sets and then exams and a final. So this is the first book, the first notebook. There are 4 of them. Notebook 7, 8, 9, and 10. Some practice for the exam, the first exam. Did a bunch of problems. Now I ended up experiencing something that I did not like. That the teacher, the number one thing that I did not like about the course right off is I didn't have access to a professor, even though I was taking a 400 level math course at UIUC. It's an instructor, somebody who doesn't even live there. It felt very impersonal. Another thing that happened was that because I like to attempt most problems, and by this point, I'm already getting warmed up into the quest, right? And so now I'm no longer having this issue that I had early on in the first chapters of Rosen, where I would kind of get lost. I'd get a lot of problems wrong. Now I'm kind of like getting my rhythm going. And so I'm beginning to get to that point where I'm attempting most problems. And it was a lady, she did not like that. I would go back and ask her questions, and I was making her work too hard. I was basically unwittingly solving problems that she may end up putting in the exam. And I was like, the model of teaching, the way it is done, has some challenges. I'm going to say it that way. when it comes to somebody like me who wants to attempt a bunch of problems, hundreds of problems. And so I found that a limitation. But again, I really felt at the time, and I think it helped me to get the validation, get that A minus. It felt awesome. It felt awesome. Yeah, so that's the second notebook. Then notebook number 9. More of the same, just going through all of number theory. This is where the fun begins. Legendre symbols. Love Legendre symbols. I went Legendre symbols crazy. By the time I was taking this course, I was just doing them all the time. I would time myself. I had a big table from the web of prime numbers, and I would randomly pick one, time myself, how long it would take me to do problems. Yeah, just to get tighter at going faster, like in an exam. So this is an exam review. Did a lot of reviewing for that course. Again, at the end, I was like, I'll never do this again just because I have a full-time job and a family. But I'm glad I did it once. Look at those Legendre symbols, primitive roots, lots of primitive roots that I did as practice for the course. Yeah. And then the last book for that course, and we covered most of the book. Oh, here, this is the table that I used to use. I printed it. Primes or all the way to 3907. And I did collect a few handouts for things that got a little hard. Roots of unity. Yeah. Did a lot of examples. My exam prep, I solved a lot of problems. And yeah, sometimes I would ask the teacher, hey, can you help with these solutions? And she wasn't too happy about that. It's like, you're making me work. Yeah, this comes in handy now with the unitary groups that I'm doing in abstract algebra. Okay, so that's the course, the number theory. Next, I went through all of Wade. Yeah, all of Wade, real analysis. Now, at this junction, I am past the number theory course. I feel like what I'm doing is doable. I've gotten validation from an actually real university with the number theory book course. And now I'm a little more aligned with what I'm doing. Kept comparing all the books. Eventually, this became the Baby Rudin project, which was too much reading and not enough problems, but I still had fun. Yeah, so Wade had about, 10 questions at the end of every section, and it has answers in the back. So it worked out great just to go through a real analysis book. Every now and then I'd do a printout. Yeah, so this was my first real analysis course that where I did some self-learning. Really straightforward. Limit proofs. But yeah, I did handouts. Lots of handouts when I was doing Wade. Yeah, that's the first notebook. Notebook 11. Then more Wade, chapter 5 and on. So now I'm into integration on the real line. A few handouts here and there, which again I no longer do. Maybe if I come across something unique, I'll get a handout for it. I used to do way more handouts back then. I really love the way Wade laid out his theorems. Everything felt like Legos in that book, and I really like that. You could always go back. It was very easy. It's very easy in Wade to go back and retrace theorems as they change from R to the N, or when you add topology or when you don't have topology. Yeah, Wade does an excellent job at that. And I'm really glad that I did it as my first book. a little ChatGPT back there when it came out, but I dropped that because ChatGPT can be wrong a lot when it comes to math, for sure. Yeah, power series. Yeah, analysis is awesome. It's a shame that the linear model that I have, it takes so long to go back to a subject once you're doing some other subject. Chapter 8, Euclidean spaces. Yeah, I think by this time is when I was using those Mitsubishi 2B pencils. Dark, really dark. Continuity. Metric spaces. Yeah, so now we're getting to the tail end of Wade. Now, towards the tail end of Wade, and I think I regret it now, I stopped doing problems because the last few chapters were like, I'm not going to do Fourier analysis now. I just want to get the basics, but keep going. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those decisions that I made. At the time, it made sense. I did not want to get bogged down. Jordan regions, chapter 12. Yeah. At some point, I think the latter chapters of Wade, I just read. I did not do problems. I shouldn't have done that. I should have done some problems. Well, I did do a few problems, but... Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did do problems all the way to chapter 13. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. Yes, I see it. I get it. It's been so long. But then the Fourier chapter, I just read it. I didn't do any problems. And that was all of Wade. Next, I did a really enjoyable book, Safin Snyder Complex Analysis, meant for engineers, a simple book, and I really wanted it to be my first book on complex analysis. Now, I did make a mistake back then, started on Nahari conformal mapping. This book was a dud. It was too hard, not enough problems. I should have found myself a second complex analysis book, but of course, this is early in the quest. I had not yet come to my two-book realization, which is only very recent with linear algebra, of just doing one book that's simpler, one book that's harder, back to back. That's my method these days. I wish I had done this for complex analysis, but now I know. This book was really straightforward. I compared the complex analysis book just to figure out the ones that I had, where everything was, and just to confirm that this was the better book for me to start with. And yeah, this book was a joy. Very, very clean learning. Answers in the back. Yeah. A few handouts, but not that many. Yeah, this is like really great learning. Contour integrals. Yeah, so that was notebook 15, and then 16 is the second bit where I finished the book. Yeah. Of course, the part about complex analysis that was weird is trying to graph functions. Boy, the fact that you're doubling the dimensions really complicates things. Removable singularities. Back then I was doing a little ChatGPT on the side, but that fizzled out. Contour integrals. Yeah, conformal mapping. Yeah, I would love to get back to complex analysis. That was a lot of fun. Then Nahari, one of my early mistakes. I learned a little from this book, but I could have learned more. I was able to rehatch some of the things that I had done in Saf and Snyder, but yeah, this is. I think Nahari is probably the one book of all the books that I've done that I should have done something else. I should have done another book. And then I had some tail end of calculus that I left around, thinking that I would get back to it. And at some point, I just said, well, I'm just gonna close the subject and just finish the notebook. So in theory, this calculus notebook should have been like notebook 4, but I just kept it around thinking that I was going to do more calculus, and I never got around to it because when I started doing analysis, I was like, well, I'm already doing analysis. What's the point? And then we come down to what turned out to be mostly a reading project. I kept the reading in the blue notebooks and then the exercises in the red notebooks. And sure enough, there are 4 blue notebooks and 1 red notebook, which is not good. Not good at all. But, I learned a lot, but I would have learned so much more if I had done way more problems. Actually, it should have been flipped. I should have had about 2 notebooks of problems for every reading notebook. That's what I should have had. And so I went all over the place in this project, 17 months, and read the first 7 chapters of Baby Rudin, read all of Bardo and Sherbert. I mean, I love analysis, so I had a lot of fun. But yeah, I do problems. Mathematics is a contact sport. That was a lesson learned from these 17 months. Yes, I did read a lot and the same material in multiple books. Read some topology, Poinsett topology. It was a lot of fun reading, but too much reading. Too much reading. Just way too much reading. Yeah. I'm here in chapter 3 of Bardo and Sherbert. Then Mendelssohn. I did do problems for Mendelssohn. That is true. I give myself that. And I did do some problems in Bardo and Sherbert. And even all of chapter 1 of Baby Rudin. That is true. Yeah. And then one more. This is notebook 21. Yeah, just a lot of analysis reading. Some Poinsett topology. Metric space. An old paper by Dieudonné. That's how you pronounce it, Dieudonné. Tansen Bruckner. Very good book. Read a bunch of that. Did a few problems. Could have done a lot more. Read some Abbott. Yeah, I did read Rudin, Baby Rudin, chapter 4, continuity. Yeah, the next time that I go back to analysis, I'm going to go analysis problem crazy because I've already put in the time. I already put in the time reading. I think so. Finally, this is the problems book. Yeah. This is where the fun really is, not in the reading. Bartle and Sherbert, Chapter 2 problems. Mendelssohn problems. Number systems. Started writing out theorems, but at some point I gave up. And I want to do that again. Writing out theorems, understanding their proofs, and doing problems. That would be my coming back to analysis plan for sure. Yeah, some problems in Thompson, Bruckner. Problems in Abbott. I timed myself. I don't know why. And yeah, problems in Chapter 1 of Baby Rudin, right here. Yeah, I attempted all of them. And then some more. Oh yeah, the topology chapter of Bartle and Sherbert. And then more reading. And this was the tail end when I said, enough. I'm done with this. I'm reading too much. I'm going to go do something else. And when I come back, I'm not going to do as much reading. So more Thompson, Bruckner. Metric spaces with a little bit of topology. Then finishing up Bartle and Sherbert. Chapter 5. Back to Abbott. Chapter 5 of Baby Rudin. Yeah, this is all Baby Rudin. And then finishing up Bartle and Sherbert. This is the tail end when I was like, all right, I'll just finish reading Bartle and Sherbert and call it a day. And finally, what I consider to be project maturity. Finally, after all the mistakes, reading a book that sucked, Nahari's conformal mapping, doing too much reading in the Baby Rudin project, not doing a second complex analysis book, and not doing any Fourier analysis problems in Wade, a few mistakes. Now, finally, we're at the point that where I think this project has gotten its wheels. 2 linear algebra books, Anton, Friedberg and Suspense, cover to cover. Attempted 90% of the problems, at least, in both books. Lots of proofs in the case of FIS. So this is Anton, 24. 24 is actually an old notebook, very old notebook. I started on Anton, read chapter 1, and then quit. And it just laid there for a couple of years. And then I went back. And I did all the problems in chapter 1, which took a long time because there were a lot of problems. And then just plowed through the book when it was great. This was great. And I had an exercise book. Another thing that I learned, whenever possible, if there's an exercise book for the book, that's a bonus. So yeah, plow through all of Anton. And I'm not going to take my time with these notebooks. These are very recent. And by this time, if you're watching this video, you're probably tired of me showing math notebooks. I'm on notebook 25. So I'll cruise through these and call it a day. So yeah, all of Anton, tons of problems, so much fun. Yeah, I would call my linear algebra sequence a demonstration of project maturity. At the 4 years, the 4-year mark coming up, I think, in a few months. So this is July, and I'm going to hit my 4 years in this project in like 2 months. So, yeah. By now, I've made a bunch of mistakes, and I've learned the hard way to just stick to a book early, a basic one, and then pick a second one that's harder, that's got more material, and go through that one too. And that's a subject. In this case, linear algebra. That's notebook 26. Then notebook 27, I think this must be near the end of Anton. Yeah, this must be the end of Anton because I finished up some appendices. Oh, I read some appendices in FIS. Where do I start? Do I start FIS in here? Let me see. I'm just curious, folks. So this is the latter part of last year. Yeah, this is FIS terminology. Yeah, so I begin Friedberg and suspense in here. And then the next 3 notebooks. Yes, they are. The next 3 notebooks are FIS. And I'll go through these very quickly because I think you're probably as tired as I am if you're watching this late in the game. Yeah, and these are all recent. I do have these videos recent. So that's notebook 28, notebook 29, early this year, Friedberg and suspense. I started coloring things, but I gave up. That's lame. I'm just not doing that. And then the last notebook of Friedberg in suspense, going all the way to May 9. Yeah. I love the fact that FIS has true and false. I really like that. Canonical forms, amazing. I learned a lot there. Now I know. It's like, okay, now I know. And that was the end of FIS. And yes, the first 30 notebooks are the hardest.